Okay, everybody, welcome. We're getting started here. We're going to do a beautiful watercolor painting. We're going to do a snowy scene out in the wilderness, a nice landscape painting. We're going to have a nice waterfall here, a creek, and a nice river flowing towards us here in the foreground. We're going to have some snowy hills in the middle distance, some pine trees here in the foreground middle distance area, then some distant pine trees in the far distance of the painting. We're going to show you how to do this all in the glazing technique. So strap in here, have a fun time, join along. We're going to show you all the techniques and methods how you can create this painting. It's a lot of fun. It's a winter scene, and again, if you don't like snow and ice and winter, no problem. I always say, hey, what we're going to tell you throughout this video, just think of being inside of a nice warm cabin with a fire going and you're looking out the window and you're painting this scene. So I like winter, but that's not everyone's cup of tea, winter time and snow and all that. So, but no problem. This is going to show you a great way to create depth in your paintings with the glazing technique, using darks and lights, warm and cool paint everywhere, and it's just a beautiful composition to work on to get the great experience you need and the feel for the glazing technique in watercolor. So stick with us here. We'll be right back. We're going to have fun, and we're going to have all the details you need to create this wonderful painting, and we'll have fun as we do it. Okay, so we'll start out in just a second with the sketch. Okay, we're getting back started again. You just saw the finished painting, so we always like to show the finished painting before we start our project here, our tutorial. You'll notice in the video I use predominantly 3 brushes. I used a square brush or a flat brush, a round brush, and then a needlepoint brush. These are the 3 brushes you would need to complete this painting. You can probably... I think, yeah, these are the 3 you really need. You might be able to get away with a really fine point brush, like a very small, maybe a brush like this where you can get a really nice point on it. But these needlepoint brushes are really the best. You have to have these needlepoint brushes if you're going to do landscapes and things like that. Landscape paintings, anything nature, trees, they're just invaluable. You have to have a needlepoint brush to get those really fine, beautiful branches, tree limbs, twigs, grasses, weeds, things like that. So I always have this on hand from any painting really I do, because even sometimes when I'm doing a streetscape scene, I might have trees and branches and things in there. So the needlepoint's really important. Of course, my go-to brush is always the round brush. I use that mostly, and I also use the flat brush or the square brush, quite a bit in my paintings. So let's get started here. Let's do our drawing first, and let's kind of talk about what we're doing as we create our drawing. So the first thing I'm always thinking about is from a landscape point of view, I'd like to always think of it as 3 thirds. So for me, this painting is going to be like a third of the ground level, the landscape area, 1/3 here. So I can just put this here and say this is going to be 1/3 is going to be our landscape area. And then we're going to have 2/3 approximately sky. 2/3 sky, 1/3 land. And that basically gets us to where we want to be as far as the design of our landscape painting we're going to do here. And it's a snowy scene, of course. You saw the finished painting. So this is fun, and if you don't like winter scenes, please try this, because we're going to do some snow. It's winter time here in the United States, so snow is always fun to paint. And if you have a hard time with snow, you're not really too fond of snow, just think of it as you're inside a cabin and you hear the fire. You have a fire going in the fireplace and it's crackling and you're totally toasty warm. And you're just painting a scene that you're looking out the window out of a cabin or a house where you're warm and you don't have to deal with the cold snow and ice and all that kind of thing and the wind. You're just kind of painting it from a nice warm place. That's fine too, because I know some people don't like snow and cold weather. So try to view it as you're looking out of a window and you're inside a warm place. That'll help if you're not so keen on painting winter scenes, but we do winter scenes every once in a while here. I want to kind of cover that because many people like the cold weather. I like the cold weather, the snow, the ice, the wind. I'm fond of that. I grew up in the northeast of the United States, so I'm used to all the seasons, the cold weather, the snow, the ice, as well as the hot, beautiful summers and springs and autumn. So let's continue on here, and let's kind of get our start to our drawing here. So I'll go with a light preliminary sketch first, and maybe we're going to have some like some hills here on the side. I'm going very lightly. I'm going to see if I can turn down my lights just a touch. Maybe we can see the pencil lines a little better. If I turn down the lighting a little bit there, that should be good. I'll go over this darker. I just want to get the flow of things going first. And so we're going to have some water here. And again, I'm going to go over this a second time. I just want to do my preliminary sketch. You always hear me speak about a preliminary sketch, and the reason we do a preliminary sketch is we're doing it very lightly, just so we can kind of get everything where we want it in our design of our picture frame here, our rectangle. So you're better off going very light in the beginning and kind of getting an idea of where everything has to go, than as if you start drawing with a really dark pencil line and then all of a sudden you start having to erase things. Then you're going to have a tough time, because sometimes the pencil marks are hard to lift off of watercolor paper. But if you have a light sketch first, then you can gently lift off the pencil lines and you won't have a problem. So that's why we do our preliminary sketch first, and then we'll go over with a darker line. I hope that makes sense. So I'm looking at my scene here, and I'm just going off of memory of how I've done previous landscape paintings with snow. So I don't have a reference photo at all. I'm just trying to do this by memory, recollection of just some hills coming down with a stream and some rocks and some hills in the back and some trees. Very simple. So here I have my hills here, and they're very simple there. Just some hills, some rolling hills, and another little bit of an embankment down here, and then there's some water. So here we have some water. Okay, we have some water. Okay. And a little bit of grass and some weeds over here, so this is pretty good. Now over here we're going to have some trees. These are some pine trees we're going to have over here on the right hand side. Just some indications of some pine trees. And then over here there's a little bit of an embankment. This might be where there's some waterfalls back in the distance. We can't see them too much. It's kind of misty back here. Then we'll have another cropping of snow over here and hills. And then over here we're going to have some more trees. So you can kind of just create some pine trees. I'm going to do some pine trees over here. Maybe a regular good old maple tree or something over here. And we'll do that. So we'll have a maple tree over here, maybe something like that. A little bit larger. That comes in over here. And a couple rocks. Okay, so we're starting to get things really looking good. And then in this distance here, there's going to be more trees, but very, very light. We're going to do a misty background with some trees over here. And there's another hill going back here, so we'll put that other hill back here. And there's some other trees back here. And then there's the sky above. Okay, so I feel like I've got a good kind of overall feel for this. So now, since we have this light sketch done, I'm going to take a quick break. I hope everyone will take breaks when you're working in watercolor. This is a natural time to take a break when you're done with your preliminary sketch. So once you get done with your preliminary sketch, you can take a break, and then we'll come back and we'll do our final contour drawing over the top of this. Sometimes you might do your preliminary sketch and you think to yourself, I really don't need to do a contour drawing over the top of this, or a darker painting or drawing over the top of this, a darker pencil line over this, because you kind of feel that you can paint this without going over a darker line. But I am going to make the darker pencil line so that you can see my drawing more clearly of how I laid everything out. And it's up to you. I really enjoy pencil lines in my paintings, so I don't mind doing a darker pencil line over the top of this. And again, when you're starting to paint, you're going to kind of notice that you won't see the pencil lines that much once you're painting over everything when you're creating your painting. Okay, so maybe I'll just make a quick pencil line around the outer perimeter of our drawing here. So we did our preliminary sketch, light, super light sketch. Now's the time, if you have to adjust, you can erase a little bit, adjust some things if you don't think they're in the right spot or it doesn't look just the way you need it to, but don't get too critical and worry about it too much. Just if it's halfway decent, you can let it be. And then you'll come back and we'll do a darker contour drawing over the top of this so you can see exactly where I'm laying out my drawing and just the way I've set it up here. And again, you can just do your light sketch if you don't think you need to do a darker sketch or drawing over the top of your preliminary sketch. That's fine. But I need to at least show the darker lines so that you can see, because I notice here it's kind of light. You can't really see everything 100%, so I want you to kind of see the lines and where I'm drawing everything. Okay, awesome. We're coming back and we're going to have the whole enchilada here for you. You're going to see the rest of the drawing and you're going to see all the painting and all the fun we're going to have doing this beautiful winter scene with snow, snowy creek with rocks and trees, a fun outdoor landscape scene that anyone can do. And again, if you like the outdoors and you like the cold weather, great, you're going to have a great time. If you have a hard time with cold weather and you don't like the cold weather, just pretend you're in a cabin looking out the window and drawing this scene, and you have it, all set. You're all good. Okay? All right, so we're going to come back in just a second. Okay, we are back, everybody, and we're going to get started with our contour drawing now. So we're going to do the darker lines of our drawing. We did our preliminary sketch first, just to lay everything out just the way we need it. The trees, the hills in the distance, the stream, the way it flows into the front of the picture, some of the hills over here, a little maple tree maybe over here, some other trees over here, some pine trees. We have lots of pine trees in this painting. So that's the main thing we did first, the preliminary sketch. Now let's do our drawing. So you're going to see me here. I'm just going to do the darker portions of this so you can see that I'm doing the darker. This is the stream, so I'm just making that stream with some rocks in the stream too, like that, maybe some snow-covered rocks here and there. We want a little bit of that going on. And then over here, this is going to be the beginning of the stream, fine. And then some snow over here, maybe a distant area over here, and some more distant area over here, kind of snowy areas where the things are frozen. Then we're going to have a little bit of a waterfall over here. So we're just going to make those water flowing type movements there. Maybe this waterfall is frozen. Maybe there's some ice. Maybe the waterfall is all frozen in this distant area here, and we're just going to see some blue. Maybe there's a little bit of water flowing here and there. And then back here, we're going to have the hills. They're going to be very lightly done. We're going to see snowy distant hills here. Then we're going to have some lighter, kind of like warmer looking trees, golds and siennas back here. And then over here, we're going to have our pine trees in the front area, the middle ground here. So this is a painting. You can kind of see that we're going to have a beautiful stepping fashion of everything going from foreground, middle distance, and then distant parts of the painting where the sky and the trees in the distant area. So this gives you a nice feel of depth in your painting. This is a really nice painting to develop that idea of distance in your paintings, and you can apply that method in other paintings too. It might be a cityscape or a figure painting or something of that nature, where you can, a park or whatever, you can add in those steps back into the painting where you'll have lighter, we'll see here as we develop this, that you're going to have lighter washes in the distance, and the foreground gets darker and darker with the tonal values as you go into the foreground here. And so you can kind of see I've gotten the drawing completed here, and we're ready to go. Now the thing is, here we are going to do this in a glazing technique, because the glazing technique will give us that nice watery diffused look of washes going from the distance in the back to the front. So let's get started with some just regular water, fresh clean water, and let's just put that onto the background here. Well, actually, let's just do the whole painting, the whole surface of this watercolor. Let's add some water to it. Just a light wash of clean water over the entire paper. We don't want to flood it tremendously, just a nice light wash of clean water over the whole painting. Then we're going to go in and we're going to get some, let's do some cadmium yellow, a little touch of cadmium orange, and that should be good for the sky, and then a little bit of cerulean blue here, like that. So we're having warm and cool. Warm colors, oranges, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, and then we have some cool colors, some cerulean blue over here, maybe a little bit of cobalt blue too. But very light. This is the first wash. We're doing the glazing technique. This first wash is super light. You're not going to add a lot of color. Just the first light washes of color. So there you can see I'm just picking up that paint and I'm putting it onto the paper like so. Lighter over here on the left. Let's go a little more over here on the right hand side, like that. And then let's just kind of take the remainder of that and put a little bit in the foreground too, but keep the warmer oranges, maybe a little bit of raw sienna. Keep that in the sky area, maybe a really warm sunset type sky, or maybe a sunrise. Maybe this is in the morning, early in the morning. That stays over here in the sky. And then you can see that I did put a little bit of the warm colors of the cadmium orange, cadmium yellow, a little bit of raw sienna, yellow ochre, perhaps. You can add that in too. And then now let's do some cool colors. Let's add some of that blue, very lightly though, not too much, just to get that around the painting too, because we're going to start with our second wash over the top of this once it dries. So we want everything to be tying in together, warm and cool everywhere. Okay, so that's about what you want to have on your paper. A light wash, very extremely light wash of some golden colors up top in the sky, and then bring those same colors with a little bit of blue, cerulean blue, and cobalt blue, just a touch though, a little bit. You can see that, right? Very light, and you bring that down into the bottom portion of your painting, into the foreground here. Once you have that done, then you have to let this dry 100%. That's the key now. When you're doing a glazing technique, you always want to remember that you want to have your washes drying 100% before you go in and do your... We might be able to start doing some distant trees over here in the distance while it's damp, but you really have to judge that carefully. You don't want to go in too soon. So if you are not familiar with the glazing technique and you're not familiar with painting over damp paper, that's no problem. Don't worry about it. Just remember, it's got to dry like at least 95% before you start going in and doing anything else, any other washes on top of this. So let's keep that in mind. So I'm going to let this dry naturally. I might help it a little bit along with the blow dryer so that we can keep working here and we don't have to take too much of your time. But I think this will be good with the way it is now. Let's do that. Let's let this dry. We'll come right back. And I always say at this point in time, if you haven't subscribed, please think about subscribing, because in this video, you're going to learn a lot of information, tons of information on techniques, how to use watercolor with the glazing technique, what colors to use, laying out your painting, all these different methods and techniques I teach on this channel. You can get them here every week, because every time I create a video, I'm always covering those same techniques you need to learn as a watercolor artist. Does that make sense? If you learn the techniques and all the methods in watercolor, you'll be way better off. So anytime you're doing a painting, at least you'll have the knowledge of all the things that we show here on this channel. So everything here is watercolor on my channel. I'm hoping you're going to subscribe. And also, too, there's those notification bells. You can click on notifications so that you're alerted when the video comes out this way. Right away, you can watch it maybe one time, just watch it full through. You're familiar with it, and then maybe the next couple days you'll start working on it and you'll start watching it again and, you know, hitting pause as you need to as you go through the painting. But the main thing is, the more you watch, the more you're going to learn. You'll hear the same terminology over and over. You'll hear the same colors being discussed over and over. You'll get more familiar with all the material, and you'll really gain a lot of insights into the watercolor medium, and you'll paint better and have a lot more successful results. And that's what I want. I want everyone to have great results with your watercolors. Otherwise, you know, you might want to give up on it, and I don't want to see that. I want to have everyone creating beautiful paintings, having a good time, enjoying it. It's a hobby. It's a lot of fun, and for some people, it's also, you know, their livelihood too. So, in any case, have fun with it, enjoy it. It's a real great medium, the watercolor medium, and I hope you will subscribe so you can get all the latest information that we have here on my channel, and we'll have lots of fun as we go. Okay, so we'll be right back. We're going to let this dry, and then we'll start doing our washes over the top of this really super light first glazing or first wash, however you want to look at it. Okay, and we'll be right back with chock full of more information. All right, we are back again here. The paper has dried somewhat, a little bit. I would say about 50%. You'll see it's a little buckled. You might be able to see that that's how it's buckled a little bit. That means it's not completely dry, but it's damp, or it's slightly damp. Very, very slightly damp right now. So this is a good time we can do our distant mountains, because we want to have the paper damp just a little bit if you can. It'll make the trees in the distance look a little bit better. So let's get right into it here, and we're going to go with a little bit thicker paint, but not a whole lot more. We're just going to do some raw umber here and some burnt sienna. We'll have some darker darks. Let's mix up our paints, darker darks, some blue in there, some blue. So we have some blue, cobalt blue. So we're doing some distant trees, lots of warm colors. Raw sienna, raw umber, definitely raw umber there. Raw sienna too, maybe some raw sienna. And I think, as you can see here, it's a whole bunch of really beautiful colors here that I mixed. Raw umber, maybe a little bit of burnt sienna too. So we have raw umber, burnt sienna, burnt umber, a little bit of cerulean blue, some raw sienna. That gives us a nice distant mountain color, or distant tree color for the distant trees here in the background. Then you can take that, load up your brush. Then what you do is you just take some tissue and gently blot up some paint off your brush. You don't want to have a ton of paint on your brush. So that's where you check off some of that paint off your brush, off your flat brush here. And let's do this. Oh, look at that. Beautiful. And then some back here too. We're going to do some darker trees over here, some more, you know, pine trees in the foreground that are darker, more greens and blues and interesting. But let's get some of that distant, still some distant colors back in there. Look at that. Some blues there too. We added some cerulean blue and some cobalt blue. Add some blues into your warm colors. And as they go into the distance, maybe over here can see I'm just tapping down. This is a very pointy brush in a sense. It's got a good sharp point on it, the flat brush, like that. So I can get those nice type of tree shapes. And that's all you're looking to do, is just get that feel of some warm and cool everywhere. So I'm picking up some blue to put in some blue, cerulean blue there. We don't want it all warm colors. We want to mix in some cool colors too. So I put those cool colors in too, like that. Okay. And you can see, look how good that looks. Distant trees, right? If you want to blot up a little bit with the tissue, you can go here and there and blot up a little bit of paint just to give it that misty feeling. Like that. See that? Perfect. Look at that. You can even add more interest to that by just blotting up a little bit of paint with the tissue. And then you get that misty feeling going through the distant trees over here in the forest. And you dry off a little bit of paint on your brush so you can, like that. Just like that. Perfect. Okay, and then now we have a little bit of a snowy embankment over here, some snowy hills over here, and then we're going to have the waterfalls here. And the paper is drying nice. It's drying naturally for us, so we can keep working. We don't have to worry. Let's keep working our paints. The next thing we'll do is let's make sure we don't have too much water in our palette. So let's blot up some of the water that we see building up in our palette. Remember, keep your palette from too much mixtures of paint and too much water puddling up. Especially as you're doing your darker colors, your darker tonal values in the foreground and in the middle distance, you need thicker paint. You don't want too much water in your palette building up. So that's why I dried off and cleaned up my palette as we go. So now here, let me see if I can change brushes here. Let's use the round brush. And let's see if we can get some blue, cerulean blue, a little bit of cobalt blue, and cerulean blue. Let's see if we can get a little bit of that that waterfall feel here. Dry off a little bit of the paint off the brush and water off the brush first, and then just do a little bit of those nice roundish looking, maybe a little bit of cobalt blue in there too. There we go. Those are the waterfalls that we see here and there. It's very misty. You can blot up a little bit too if you need to, if you want to make it more misty looking back there by that waterfall in the distance. And then we're going to continue on. Burnt umber here, a little bit of some French ultramarine blue and burnt umber. And then let's also add a little bit of that there too. So I like to, if I'm going to, you'll see I'm just doing a little bit of blotting. I want to get a little bit of that color by just finger painting a little bit. I want to get a little bit of that color in my distant colors. If I'm going to put it into the foreground here where the water is. So I hope that makes sense, because now I'm going to go in and start doing some water here with that brown and French ultramarine blue color, maybe a little cerulean blue mixed in there too. Let's do that. So now I'm going to go in and do my foreground here. Set the tone for the painting, get some darks in here. Let's do that. So you can see how I'm Getting some of those darks in now. This is really good to do. Get some darks into your painting. Maybe some burnt umber and more French ultramarine blue with that burnt umber to give it more of a darker feel up close here, like that. There we go. Look at that, how great that looks. The darks right up in front, close. Your darkest colors are always closest to you in your foreground, and your lighter, very soft colors are always in the distance in the background. So whenever you're creating a painting like this, where you're creating that depth and that three-dimensional feeling of things going back into the distance, all you have to just remember is the distant colors are always a little bit cooler in color, like more blues, and they're lighter, very light in tonal value, very light. And then in the foreground here like this, your colors are going to be much more darker in tonal value, and they might be a little bit warmer too, not as cool. So that's our stream here. And we might have a few rocks in there, so I'll blot up a little bit of paint. And then we'll just paint around that. We'll pretend there's a rock there. There's a little rock in front of the scene here, in that little bit of that creek, and that little bit of a river here, little creek and river. Okay, now we are really looking pretty good. We're going to do some darker trees. Let's get those going. Let's get our sap green, French ultramarine blue, maybe two. A little bit of burnt umber in there. We could use that. And maybe some French ultramarine blue, more of that. And then let's see if we can, let's go back to our, let's do some more blue over here. So we're going to mix more green here, then a little more blue over here, like that. Then let's get our square brush again, our flat brush. Okay, let's get our flat brush. I rinsed it off. I dry a little bit of the water off because we don't want it too much water flooding into our palette. Once you rinse off your brush, my flat brush, I'm rinsing it off into my water bucket. Once I rinse the brush off, I dry it off a little bit on the tissue, or you can use a small sponge next to your water bucket. So you can take your brush, rinse it off, tap it on a sponge next to your water bucket, your water glass, whatever you use for your water bucket or water glass or pail or container. Dry off a little bit of the water, and then you go into your mixed paint that you already have mixed up, and and then you can see, look what we're, oh wow, beautiful. Some nice green pine trees, look at that. French ultramarine blue, nice, good darks. You want some really good darks in here. French ultramarine blue. See, I'm making a lot of red darks. Maybe some burnt sienna in there too. Burnt umber, burnt sienna in that dark blue. And then a little bit of the green mix in there too. There we go. We want some of those dark darks like that. And fire him in too. Don't be afraid. Get him in there. Those trees. Pine trees. Look at those pine trees. Beautiful. Then you can take these colors, make them a little lighter, and you might have some other ones here. Make them a little lighter, and those might be in the distance here too. They're behind. That. And there's some more over here. More dark pine trees over here too. Let's balance it. We got some darks over here. Let's make some darks over on this side too. That'll really look great. If you can balance your painting, think of it like a seesaw. like a seesaw, or if you have a bookshelf with books and you want to have bookends on each side of your books on your bookshelf, you want it to be sort of balanced. You wouldn't want to have a big bunch of darks over here and nothing balancing it. You want to have a balance over here. Does that make sense? That's why I mentioned that. So you have a little bit of balance there in your painting. Like that. There we go. And then we can take we'll take our needlepoint brush, get some darks on that needlepoint brush here, and then you can get some more fine lines. And that makes the story a little better here because we have some more very, very fine lines here, which kind of look better. Sometimes this flat brush doesn't always kind of give you all the details you need, so that's why you will use your fine needlepoint brush to get some more very, very fine details in. So I'll do that over here. And we're going to do even more details yet. We're going to do a maple tree or something over here. But this is just some good fine details that we can add to this. Like that. Okay, so we have and we can even add some of those greens over here too. Let's add some greens to those browns we have over here. That'll look good. And this is just an overall idea of the glazing technique and doing a landscape painting, and you're having some pine trees, other types. Let's do a pine tree or a maple tree, brown, cerulean blue, a little bit of that green mixture over here. And then this way we can do like a maple tree over here, like so. And we'll just get those branches going, the trunk of the tree. And some of that. And then we can get some splashes here. We'll pick up some of those greens and blues and just make some leaves on this tree over here, this maple tree we just created. Okay. And then let's do a little more detail here. We'll add some French ultramarine blue to the burnt umber over here, and a little bit of the sap green too, and a little bit of burnt umber. And we'll just have a little more. I rinse off my brush, I dry off the brush on some tissue, and then I just sort of drag down that paint a little bit, like that. Drag down the paint just a touch, like that. And then we are getting near. Let's get a little bit more, maybe some shadows, some cool shadows. And we could do those cooler shadows with some blue, cerulean blue. And again, this is pretty much where we're getting there. I think we're pretty much have this completed. We've gotten all the interesting elements that we needed in this painting. Maybe we'll have a little more. Again, here we'd like to dry off our palette because, again, as we work, we want to make sure we're keeping our colors good, clean, fresh. And we also want to make sure we can get thick paint. If we have too much water in our palette, we can't get thick paint. So let's make sure we can get thick paint. Thick paint, here we go. We've got some sap green and burnt umber. Like that, a little bit of French ultramarine blue. And then we can have a little more, some weeds and some grasses and things over here, and we'll add some of that to the painting over here too. We could flip up a little bit of stuff, you know, weeds and things go upwards like that. Let's do that. Let's get our needlepoint brush, get a little bit of sap green and blue like that, maybe a little bit of that mixture in there too. And that's all we need, just a couple little twigs and things like this over here in the foreground. So when we're in the foreground here, we can add these little subtle details that add to the depth of the painting. You can see more details in the foreground here, and you can't see that much detail in the distance of the painting. So more details up close. Really not many details in the back over there. And then you can add a little more, some splashes, maybe some rocks and things over here. So I'll just add some rocks over here. And maybe some more cerulean blue. Maybe we can add some frozen ice over here. So there's some ice and frozen snow over here, and we'll just put that in the middle distance here, the middle ground. Maybe there's some like that. Maybe a little bit of straight cerulean blue. That's our waterfall area. French ultramarine blue, burnt umber, burnt sienna, sap green. You can make a really, really nice dark green. And you can even do that too here in the foreground. Just to get some darker darks in there. Same over here, add some darks there, just and I think that looks pretty good. So here we've had a fun time. I think this is a good painting. It gives us the real excellent feel of 3 dimensions. Foreground here with the creek up close, middle distance the waterfalls over here frozen with some pine trees, and then in the distance some more pine trees, more lighter colors in the distance, softer looking. That gives us that look of 3 dimensions as we go back in the painting. And I really think you'll have fun with this if you give this a try. Again, it's a snowy landscape. And if you're not too fond of snow, again, pretend you're in that cabin with a fire going and you're just looking out the window. If you like cold weather and snow, then you'll have fun. You'll have more fun doing this painting. But it's winter time, so we're going to try a few winter paintings here and there now. And we'll peel off the tape. We'll take a look. That looks good. We've got the effect that we wanted with the glazing technique. So if anything, you've learned a really valuable few techniques and methods with the glazing technique of doing that light wash first and then going over the top with your darker subsequent washes to give yourself that really, really good feeling of depth in your painting. So if you're kind of keeping in mind the Depth is the softer, lighter, cooler colors in the background. That's your distant colors. And then as you move closer into the painting, as you're standing in the front of this painting, as things get closer, they get darker, much more rich colors and lots of paint, lots of straight paint, not too much water. And if you can kind of see that, the creek here too, running into the distance here, we might be able to give this a little more. We might be able to do this too. Like that. Maybe we can kind of tie this in a little better into the distance. Like that. Okay. Everybody, thanks for stopping by and painting along with us. I hope you had a fun time with this painting. I'm sure you're going to leave lots of questions in the comments section if you feel like you need to get any kind of information that you need from me as far as how we did this painting. I always welcome that. Many comments is fine. I enjoy talking with everyone in the comments section. Thanks so much for all your great comments, your kind comments. Everyone's always so nice and really pleasant and complimentary towards my paintings and my work here. So I'm excited about watercolors. I hope you're going to get excited. And this is a real fun painting to try out. And I hope you'll come back again very soon. And we will have a fun time on the next video, okay? Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.